Chapter 3. On the Road Again. The campfire had burned down to ash when Izzi crested the outer wall. Kaelen sat exactly as she pictured him, back braced against a crumbling stone, great sword stretched across his knees, eyes half-lidded but sharp enough to catch her the instant she came into view. He didn't rise, didn't even shift, just tilted his head slightly, tusked mouth curling into the faintest smirk. "Day late, Iz," he rumbled. "Thought you'd finally gotten yourself killed." Izzi tugged her hood back, copper-streaked hair catching the dawn. She dropped into a crouch by the ashes, rubbing her chilled hands together. "Almost. But you'll be glad to know our scribe still breathes. The healers have him tied together with enough thread to stitch a sail and—" She hesitated, voice softening. "He's got someone who'll stay at his side." Kaelen's scarred brow arched. "So, what are we doing about him?" Izzi met his eyes across the dying coals. "He belongs in this world, Kaelen, not ours. If he follows us, Celine, our pasts, will get him. Better he heals, with someone who can keep him grounded." For a long moment, Kaelen said nothing, only shifted the greatsword until it rested beside him. Finally, he gave a slow nod, the corners of his mouth twitching downward. "For once, Iz, I agree." Relief tugged at her chest, though she smothered it under a grin. "Mark the day. We actually agreed on something." Kaelen grunted. "Don't get used to it." He reached for the pouch at his belt and shook it once. The jingle was thin, hollow. "Speaking of things not to get used to, how much coin have you got left?" Izzi winced, patting the pouch at her hip. The silence was answer enough. Kaelen barked a short laugh. "That bad, eh? I've only enough for a few loaves of bread myself. Maybe a mug of piss-poor ale if the barkeep's feeling generous." Izzi sighed, tipping her head back toward the pale sky. "Well, Horian did make you an offer. Said we should mention his name at Cerulea's rest." Kaelen's face flattened, unimpressed. "That loud-mouthed sellsword? I doubt he even remembers saying it. Probably shouted it just to hear his own voice echo." Izzi smirked, leaning forward, her elbows on her knees. "Maybe, but we can't stay here. Not with Celine's shadow hanging over the city, not with the guards sniffing for blood. Cerulea's rest is far enough we can breathe, if only for a moment. And if Horian's full of hot air, well, we'll scrounge up coin once we get there." Kaelen studied her for a long moment, then shrugged, the weight of his shoulders like stone rolling off a hill. "A break, huh? You've earned one. We both have." He pushed himself to his feet, greatsword sliding into place across his back. "Let's go find this paradise. If nothing else, we'll eat better than charred fish and crusts of bread." Izzi stood, brushing ash from her hands, her smile tinged with both weariness and stubborn hope. "Cerulea's rest, then." Together they turned from the ruins of the wall, the city shrinking behind them as the road stretched ahead. They left the city as dusk bled into night, the road a ribbon of shale and dust, unwinding beneath a sky pricked with early stars. Wind combed the grass in silver waves. Crickets stitched a thin, busy music at the hedgerows. Izzi walked a half-stride ahead, hood up, hands tucked into her cloak. Kaelen's greatsword rode his back like a slab of moonlight, catching every stray glimmer. They spoke little at first. The quiet wasn't strain, it was a long breath after a held one. By dawn, the world softened. Fields lifted into low hills, dotted with sheep and the occasional bent stone marker that had forgotten the name it once kept. Kaelen's shoulders eased as nothing leapt from the ditch for once. No irons singing out of brush or bracken. "First stretch of road in months that hasn't tried to kill us," he said, almost cheerful in his gravel way. Izzi arched an eyebrow. "Careful. If the road hears you, it'll get ideas." Day rolled over day. Noon heat baked the dust into their boots. Evening cooled it to powder. They ate where they could, hard cheese, tougher bread, and traded dry jokes the way other travelers trade water. Somewhere along the second dusk, when the sky went the color of bruised plums, they crested a hill and saw the sea again. This time not as a black maw under a temple, but as a copper sheet winking with sails. The port town below spilled in a crooked fan around its harbor. "Gull's Hook," Kaelen read off a sun-cracked post, where a painted bird with a fish in its beak had faded to ghost gray. Ropes hung like thick cobwebs between bollards. Nets steamed on racks. Tar, kelp, and wood smoke braided into a smell that bit and warmed in equal measure. They threaded the alleys toward the docks. Ships swayed at anchor, fat-bellied cogs with patched sails, a sleek caravel preening in the center berth like a rich man's dagger, and lean coastal craft that looked fast even while moored. Out beyond the harbor's teeth of rock, sunlight dazzled off a scatter of white hulls headed for the glitter on the horizon. "Cerulea's Rest lies there," a dockhand offered when Izzi asked, pointing with a tar-black fingernail. "Island and town both. Pretty as a painting, if you can afford the paint." They found a captain in a salt-stiff coat trimming a ledger with a knife. His beard was tarred into a neat wedge. Gold hoops winked in both ears. "Passage?" he drawled, not looking up yet. "Deck or cabin?" "Deck will do," Izzi said, turning her easiest smile on him. "Two of us. We don't take much space." He named a price that could have bought a mule and a saddle besides. Izzi's smile thinned. "That seems ambitious." "Sea's rough," he said blandly, though the water lay flat as hammered pewter. His eyes slid up, took Izzi in with a slow, weighing look that made Kaelen's jaw set. "Unless you mean to make yourselves useful." He let the words hang, ugly as bilge. "Put on a show for the crew, sweetheart. Strip the fare down." Kaelen shifted. The greatsword's hilt rasped against his shoulder. Izzi laid 2 fingers on his wrist without looking, a touch light as a moth. Her smile didn't crack, but it cooled to glass. "We'll try our luck elsewhere." "Luck's expensive," the captain called after them. "Then he can keep it," Izzi said, and turned her back on his ship. They walked in silence for a while, letting the slap of water against pilings and the crank of winches rinse the moment away. The town around the harbor woke to afternoon swagger. Hawkers barked over baskets of sardines and scallops. A boy ran past with a string of tin bells. A woman in a blue apron thumped loaves onto a stall. The signboards creaked, painted fish and anchors knocking softly. They ducked beneath one that read, "The Brine and Bell." A squat tavern with a leeward lean and a bell hung over the bar that looked as if it had once lived on a ship. Inside, air hugged close. Ale and brine, wood and sweat. A hint of frying onions. Sawdust sopped spills on the floor. Scrimshaw tusks lined a shelf, etched with whales and storms. A 2-string fiddle sawed patient notes in the corner, while a sailor thumped time with a boot heel. "Plan?" Kaelen asked, eyeing the room's board with its curl of posted work. "Deck hands wanted, rat catcher needed, guard for warehouse nights." "Coin," Izzi said. "Any way we can earn it and keep our skin. You can win some on that arm of yours." She nodded toward a table where 2 bruisers grunted over an arm wrestle, coins bright as fish scales and a little tied around their elbows. "I'll see if these fine patrons enjoy a game with a few friendly wagers, or a demonstration." "Not the stripping sort," Kaelen said dryly. "Rot off," Izzi muttered, but her grin flashed, quick and wicked. She made a small stage of a vacant barrel, set a bottle on its side, then another balanced on the first. A third she perched at a tilt like a gull about to lift. A little crowd drew in on curiosity alone. Knife throwers appear now and again in ports, but few move like river water. Izzi let her fingers trail over the hilts at her belt, drew, flipped, and sent a blade humming. It pinned the first bottle's cork without shattering the glass. Coins clicked as someone approved. Another knife skated, sliced a curl of label from the second. Murmurs thickened. At the far table, Kaelen's great paw clasped a fisherman's, elbows dug into scarred oak. The first contest cracked the table like thunder. The fisherman's hand went down so fast his eyes lagged behind it. Laughter, a groan, more coins. Another challenger, thicker in the wrists, tucked a lucky charm beneath his palm and glared. Kaelen smiled like a cliff barley, and let the man strain a long, burning moment before pressing him to the wood with the steady patience of tide. Izzi caught the barkeep's eye between throws. "A cut for the house if we can keep the games tidy. You keep 'em buying and you've got your stage," the woman said, polishing a pewter mug with a bit of clean rag. "No fights I have to fix." "Wouldn't dream of it," Izzi said, and sent the next knife shaving a clean ring around the topmost bottle so the glass cap slipped off and landed upright. The little bell over the bar clanged as someone slapped it in delight. Mugs lifted, Kaelen's table roared. By evening, the place hummed. Coins chimed into Izzi's palm. Kaelen's stack grew slow and honest. The fiddle stitched faster tunes. The day had begun rusted with refusal, but as dusk slid in through the windows and turned the room to warm amber, their shoulders loosened. Not rich, but not empty. Enough to imagine a berth on a morning tide. Izzi leaned against the bar to tally their small fortune. 2 nights of this, she said, low so only Kaelen heard. And we buy our way to paradise. Paradise? Kaelen repeated, side-eyeing the bruise-purple sky through the pane. We'll see if it lives up to name. Even if it doesn't, Izzi said, flipping a coin and catching it on the back of her knuckles. It'll be better than now. Kaelen grunted assent. Somewhere outside, a ship's bell tolled the hour. Inside, the tavern's own bell answered, bright and brassy. For once, the night felt like it might pass without teeth. The Brine bell was still humming when the harbor bell outside pealed a new arrival. Voices tilted, chairs scraped. Half the room craned toward the windows. Izzi and Kaelen slipped back into the salt air just as a lean cutter nosed between the pilings, low in the water, sails the pale gray of a fog bank, her hull clean as a knife. A woman in a weathered coat strode down the gangplank with a bosun at her shoulder, barking orders that sounded like second nature and good sense. Izzi fell in beside her with an easy smile. Cerulea's rest. What's your price for 2 on deck? The captain flicked a measuring look over them. Izzi's traveling leathers gone threadbare, Kaelen's greatsword broad as a barn door, and named a fare that made Izzi's brows lift. That's considerably kinder than what we heard earlier, Izzi said. The captain snorted. Some captains tax gulls for the privilege of flying. I don't. Tide turns within the hour. Decide fast. They didn't need a council. Between Kaelen's arm-wrestled winnings and Izzi's knife-show purse, they scraped the silver into the captain's palm until only a handful of coins clinked lonely in Izzi's pouch. Not rich, but afloat. Deck, Kaelen said. Deck, the captain agreed, already turning. Stow your kit, keep clear of the lines, and don't argue with the sea. They climbed aboard with the last of the light. Dock hands kicked the lines free. Blocks squealed, canvas bellied with a satisfied whump as the wind took it. Gull's hook slipped backward, then dwindled, then was only a smudge on the edge of the world. The cutter's bow rose and fell with a long, easy motion, spray kissing their faces. Salt wind pulled at Izzi's braid and tugged a rare smile out of Kaelen. They stood at the rail, elbows near, watching the water change from pewter to indigo to velvet. Rigging hummed a thin, contented chord above them. Somewhere aft, a sailor laughed the laugh of a man with a warm mug waiting at land's end. Izzi breathed deep. If paradise is a lie, I don't want the truth for a day or two. What are you hoping for? Kaelen asked, squinting at the pale smear on the horizon that might have been cloud or island or promise. People, she said without hesitation. Crowds I can vanish into. Laughter in the streets. A cove so clear you can count the shells on the bottom. I want to swim until the salt lives in my hair and my skin forgets what blood feels like. Kaelen's mouth tugged into something that wasn't quite a grin. Food, he said. Bowls that steam. Fish that flakes under a fork. Bread that doesn't fight back. A bed that doesn't remember the last dozen shoulders that fell on it wrong. And soft sheets? Izzi teased. I'd settle for a mattress that isn't a stack of regrets, he rumbled. She chuckled, letting the sound be stolen by the wind. Deal. You get your feast and your soft bed. I'll find the warmest water and the loudest music. Maybe even a dance I don't have to watch my back through. Watch it anyway, Kaelen said, but there was no edge to it, only habit and a man who'd made vigilance a kind of love. They fell quiet, watching the sea lift and lay itself down again. The cutter drove on, the island growing by inches, then by breaths. For once, the world did not gnash its teeth around them. The breeze smelled of ropes and open water. The future tasted like salt and something almost sweet. Night settled like velvet, the sea rolling calm beneath a sky pricked with stars. Lanterns swung along the rigging, their light pooling gold on salt-wet planks. Izzi and Kaelen leaned against the rail, half listening as the crew swapped stories over mugs and salted meat. One voice rose above the others, cracked with age but rich, carrying. The man who owned it sat cross-legged near the mast. His skin seemed like old rope, one eye cloudy and the other sharp as flint. A circle of sailors leaned in, the way children lean toward a fire. Mark me, he rasped, tapping a bony finger against the deck. It's not the storms you fear, nor the reefs. It's the songs. Sweet as honey, soft as your mother's voice. But it'll drag you under quicker than iron. A younger sailor scoffed. You mean sirens? The old man's good eye gleamed. Aye, seen 'em. Hair like seaweed, teeth white as cut shells. They sing, and the sea sings with 'em. Men leap into the waves, grinnin' like fools, thinkin' they're swimmin' into a lover's arms. Naught but bones left on the rocks when the tide pulls back. A hush lingered after his words, broken only by the creak of rigging. Even Kaelen leaned forward, the great sword across his knees, brows furrowed. Izzi smirked faintly, breaking the spell. "And what stopped you from leaping, old salt? Don't tell me you were too clever for a goddess's song." The old man gave a grin with more gaps than teeth. "Nay, too drunk to hear it proper. Rum saved me where prayers wouldn't." The crew laughed, but it was the laughter of men who laughed to shake off a shiver. Kaelen rumbled, "Drunk or not, I'd keep my ears plugged if we crossed such waters." "Best pray you do," the old sailor muttered, his gaze drifting back to the horizon. The moment lingered, the whisper of the waves, the imagined sound of voices beneath them, until another sailor broke it with a slap of dice against wood. "Stories are good, but dice don't lie. Who's in?" Izzi's ears pricked, and the edge of her grin returned. She pushed off the rail, brushing hair from her face. "Now that sounds like my kind of prayer." Kaelen groaned, but didn't move as Izzi joined the little circle around a barrel, sailors already clattering coins into the pot. The dice were bone, pitted and worn smooth at the corners, the kind that carried as much superstition as chance. "You've the look of one who cheats," said a broad-shouldered deckhand, eyeing her daggers. Izzi winked. "Only when the stakes are worth it." She tossed a coin into the pile. "But I play fair to start." Kaelen stayed at the rail, shaking his head, though a faint curl of amusement tugged at his mouth as he watched her settle in. The barrel made a fine table, scarred and ringed with salt stains. Dice clattered across its top, bouncing off the rim into the circle of waiting hands. Lantern light gleamed on eager eyes and the small stack of coins that grew heavier with every round. Izzi leaned in, elbows on the wood, her smile as sharp as the blades she carried. "So how's it played?" "Simple," said the deckhand across from her, a broad fellow with a scar through his brow. "Highest sum wins the pot. Tie goes to another round." "Luck decides all?" Izzi teased, already fishing a dagger from her belt to twirl idly between her fingers. The scarred sailor snorted. "Luck, or the gods. Depends which you trust." "Neither," Izzi said, flashing her teeth. "But I've been known to make my own." The dice passed to her. She gave them a lazy shake, fingers caressing the bone like she meant to whisper secrets into them, then tossed. They rolled clean, tumbling to a stop on a 6 and a 5. "11, someone muttered. "Not bad." Scarbrow took his turn. 9. Another sailor. 7. The pot slid toward Izzi, who collected the coins with a neat sweep, bowing her head as if in prayer. "Second round." More coins tossed in, more laughter. Izzi's dice tumbled again, landing this time on a neat double 6. Gasps, groans, muttered curses. "Impossible!" Scarbrow growled, narrowing his eyes. "Twice in a row?" Izzi only shrugged, plucking a coin from the pile and rolling it across her knuckles in a lazy arc. "Blame the gods, not me. Maybe they're smiling tonight, or maybe your fingers are quicker than your dice." Before the tension could snap, Kaelen's voice rolled from the rail, dry as sand. "She cheats only when the stakes are high. You lot aren't rich enough for her trouble." Laughter broke the suspicion. A sailor shoved the dice toward Kaelen. "Then let's see if your friend's any better. Put those arms to use off the rope." Kaelen sighed, heavy as an anchor, and came to the barrel. He dropped a coin into the pot, one of Izzi's winnings, and scooped the dice into his palm. They looked absurdly small in his thick fingers. He shook once, rolled. 2 6s. The sailors erupted, half cheering, half cursing. Izzi's laugh bubbled bright, spilling into the night air. "Seems the gods like him better." Kaelen only grunted, sweeping the coins into a pouch without ceremony. "Guess I play straighter than you." "Straighter, duller, heavier," Izzi said, nudging him with her elbow. "But I'll forgive it, since you just doubled our purse." The sailors clamored for another round, but Kaelen shook his head, already turning back to the rail. "Best to leave the gods wanting more." Izzi winked at the circle, sweeping a coin into the barkeep's palm for good measure, and followed. Behind them, dice clattered again, laughter chasing them across the deck. They leaned side by side against the rail as the cutter pressed into the night. The sea hissed below, stars wheeled above, and for the first time in weeks their pockets jingled with more than dust. Izzi and Kaelen had claimed their corner of quiet at the rail. The sea stretched endless, black as polished glass, reflecting a scatter of stars so bright they seemed close enough to pluck from the sky. Izzi leaned on her forearms, the salt wind teasing strands of copper hair loose from her braid. Her violet-gray eyes were turned upward, searching constellations she only half remembered. Kaelen stood beside her, his great bulk a wall of calm. For once, he looked less like a sentinel and more like a man simply present. Neither spoke for a long while. The hush was enough. Finally, Izzy let out a low laugh, soft as the tide. "If this is what peace feels like, I almost don't trust it." Kaelen glanced at her, his tusked mouth twitching into the faintest smirk. "You never do." She turned her head toward him, her grin tired but real. "True. Maybe that's why I keep you around. You're good at reminding me not to." The silence after wasn't heavy, only comfortable. They let the sea's rhythm rock them into something gentler than sleep. By the time dawn bled into the horizon, the cutter was already gliding toward its destination. Cerulea's rest rose from the sea like a dream, an island cradled in pale light. White sand beaches curved into turquoise coves so clear the seabed gleamed like glass. Slopes of emerald forest climbed inland, dotted with villas painted in blues and golds, their tiled roofs glinting in the morning sun. Fishing boats bobbed in the harbor, bright sails snapping like banners, while gulls wheeled overhead in raucous welcome. Izzy's breath caught, unguarded. "Gorgeous," she murmured. "Almost makes you forget the world out there." Kaelen leaned both elbows on the rail, squinting toward the port. "Beds first, food second. Then maybe I'll look at the view." Izzy laughed, a sound that mingled with the wind and gulls and the slap of waves against the hull. For a heartbeat, with Cerulea's rest glowing before them like a jewel cast upon the sea, it felt as though the past could not follow.
Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. More chapters are on the way.